Hello friends, here is DattatreyaTapkeer, willing to ask you an interesting question, and that is, do you have spiritual stress? A very strange question indeed. Perhaps this question might have created a stress in your mind. You might be thinking, well, is there something like a spiritual stress? Because you must have heard about many kinds of stress and their causes and their symptoms and how to overcome them, and there are many things like stress management and all that. So the existence of stress in our life is so obvious, and in our field, each and every field we are suffering from different kinds of stress. So some might be talking about physical stress, and then psychological, mental stress is there, emotional stress is there. Well, there may be many other types of stress. But this is having a stress about something, having this kind of anxiety or stress about something has become our common experience, and it has become so common we expect it. Actually, we take it for granted, and we know that we are all surrounded by stress, different kinds of stress. And now the problem arises, what is this kind of thing, spiritual stress? Is there any official kind? Is there any type of this stress, like spiritual stress? Well, friends, I was just joking about, don't be serious, don't worry at all. There's nothing like spiritual stress, in fact. It's not a formal, official or studied kind of stress at all. It is just for the fun. I was just joking. Why? Because I do feel that, as per my own experience and whatever I find in others also, when we try to identify ourselves as a spiritual personality, or when we try to start a spiritual practice, what happens actually? Maybe anything like that. You may start, you may work with meditation, you may work with concentration, you may work with yoga, or you may work with pranayama, or you may work with any kind of system, and your entire mental setup is of spiritual. So you are in the initial stages, you have interest in spirituality. You might listen to different lectures, you might read different books, you might discuss it with your friends, and then so-called spirituality enters into your setup. It enters into your life slowly. You are very happy with it. That yeah, I'm spiritual, I'm becoming spiritual, I do have a spiritual setup in my mind, and then different practices you start. And then what I think, this kind of strange phenomenon starts taking place. It happens automatically that something, a very different kind of stress, which is neither anxiety, which is nor a formal or a clear-cut recognizable stress like other stresses, but something very peculiar happens. As a spiritual practitioner, I start imagining certain things. I start expecting certain things. I start expecting many more things to happen in my life. And I find that I am underachiever. I become over-expector and I become underachiever. That's the problem, and this is what I call a spiritual stress. It's a new invention, like, and it's a kind of creativity. We are also creative about creating, inventing new kinds of stresses. So this, I do think that this kind of new, very peculiar, very strange, very interesting kind of stress is coming up in our minds, in our lives, and that is on the spiritual path, maybe bhakti path, maybe jnana marga path, that is knowledge, or karma yoga, or a way of action, a way of work, or japa and meditation and chanting, whatever. Whenever from your daily routine, normal, so-called non-spiritual life, you start entering into, you start beginning something special, something different, which may be called as spiritual, which you yourself are calling it spiritual, or maybe your relatives, your family members and your friends might be calling it spiritual. When such kind of different daily routine, such kind of different lifestyle is there, that creates a kind of over expectation in our behavior. We always over expect. We always expect something to happen. We always keep certain goal before our mind. Our desires are again, they are strengthened in a way. So there is something kind of, powerful spiritual desires coming up in your mind. Many things come up. Many times comparisons do come. you may find certain your other friends also following spiritual path, and then this kind of very strange comparison sets in. You start comparing yourself with your friend, with your relative, whatever. You start comparing that. He is doing or she is doing something and getting some experience which I am not. When you read something, again you put certain goals, and outwardly you think that, well, I do have to keep that goal in my mind. After all, spirituality is a great path. After all, spirituality, there has to have some, some kind of goal at the end, some kind of mission, some kind of vision at the end. All these words are high sounding and they are very justifiable. So there is nothing wrong in that. We think, oh, but that's okay. Somebody is trying for spirituality, and in spirituality, it's a path. So we do have this model in our mind that I am somewhere and I have to reach somewhere. And then I am nothing and I have to become something. And there is hardly anything with me now. I am very poor. This is great poverty. I call that as a spiritual poverty. And I am going to attain something great, something spiritual. That will be called a spiritual richness. Some spiritual treasure I am going to get. So something I am missing now, that something I will get after some period. After traveling, after journeying, after some point of, after some period, after some duration, then I will reach to some point of space and some point of time where I will be totally changed. And these kinds of things, they are very good, they are very sweet, they are very nice anyway, they are very ambitious anyway, they are very affirmative, they are very positive, they are very goal directed, no doubt. But see the undercurrent that goes on with it. If actual spirituality means complete relaxation, if actual, real, genuine spirituality means complete effortlessness, if real spirituality means total surrender to it, if real spirituality means total egolessness in it, if real spirituality means, being free, being out of these desires, being out of all these wishes, do not exert your willpower or your wishes all the time. So this kind of extreme relaxation, extreme comfort, this kind of extreme freedom from all kinds of desires and all kinds of bondages, if that is going to be real spirituality, then how am I going to get it? Then this kind of stress comes in, that how shall I get it? It's a long path. I'm somewhere down, I'm somewhere at the ground, and I have to rise up, I have to reach to the Everest, I have to reach to the top. So these kinds of images, these kinds of models start dancing in our mind. I am at the lower level, I have to go to the higher level. I am in the darkness and I have to go to the light. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, as it is called. I am living in this, everything is false and I have to reach to the truth. Now you would ask me, what is wrong in that? That's what the spirituality is. Yes, friends, I know that. I have been through it. All this is true. But the way with which our mind, rather subconscious mind, takes it, it creates this kind of screen in our mind all the time, which is very difficult to control them. This kind of stress, which is very subtle, which is very invisible, which is very difficult to point out, which is very difficult to diagnose, which is very difficult to identify, that becomes the problem. I found in some of my friends and relatives that in the spiritual practices, they are sincere, no doubt, but somewhere this kind of thing is always, troubling them within from their mind. They're always, under that tension and under that pressure. That some work is there. They become workaholic in spirituality. Actually, in spiritual world, in the real spiritual person who is really spiritually intelligent, who has real spiritual wisdom, he has to be free of all these bondages. Means he will work, but his work will have a total different quality. It will be total creative, joyful, free, fresh, relaxed work. But what do I find is, all so-called spiritual persons, they are doing their spirituality with so serious faces, with so serious attitude, with so serious and so solemn, and something as if very sad enters into their life, and they are always burdened under. They are under always pressurized below the great, as if I call that as a spiritual responsibility, as a spiritual responsibility again. That is, they think that I have to do so much things. I have to go through all this. I have to do this practice. I have to do this sadhana. I have to do this and that. And then I have to go on achieving it. And they are always expecting the results. And this curiosity is so strange that whenever they do something quite sensible, spiritually sensible thing, they immediately think that I should get immediate result. It is like, pulling when you are planting the seed and you are just trying to pulling it up. You are trying to remove the soil and just seeing how much it has sprouted. That's what happens. So this kind of what you call is a patience, this kind of waiting, this kind of accepting whatever happens surrounding us. These qualities are needed for real spirituality. The real spirituality rests upon your totally patient, totally relaxed, totally free, totally effortless kind of mind. And actually, on the contrary, all these opposite, all these reverse things go on there. And therefore, maybe even I have seen that many kinds, those who are emotionally strong or emotionally sensitive people, for whom Bhakti Marga or the devotion, the path of devotion is quite better. There also the same problem arises. They do think, because there is always conflict, confusion in the mind, that whenever you are loving the image of God or the personal God, again these problems arise there. You don't have the clear concept that how can I conceptualize, how can I realize, how can I visualize, how can I imagine the personal image of God? Can this universal power, can the so-called universal or cosmic power, this entire omnipotent God with G capital, can that God come into, solidify into, materialize into, manifest into a personal form, a personality as such, a personality with whom I would love that, and that personality which would love myself, and then I will have communication with it, and I will have a dialogue with it, because such a devotee starts reading so many stories about ancient devotees. He reads from the ancient histories, he reads from the stories of the saints and religious seekers, and then histories and Puranas and mythology and whatnot. And from all these things, he is convinced that all these things have happened, and how will it happen in my life? So this kind of restlessness, this kind of extreme curiosity happens, that how am I going to get this? When shall I have a dream? When shall I have a dream that my image of God will come and will talk to me? Or when shall I have that vision or darshan of that Lord with that image, with that personal God who will manifest before me? On what all those things? What signals will I get from the divinity that will prove that I am right on the spiritual path? The same thing happened in case of Guru. Those who are fortunate enough to get their real Gurus who would really guide them on the spiritual path. So there again this kind of tension and struggle begins. So this kind of restlessness, this kind of reaching somewhere, this kind of competition, this kind of doing something, then again a very different kind of ego is also developed. What is that ego? That I am different from others. I am doing something special. I am not a common man. Anyway, I am becoming extraordinary. Yeah, I am humble, I am very good, I am great, I have got good qualities, and I am on the right path, and I am doing all spiritual practices. All these so-called goody sweet things themselves create a kind of egoism in a man's mind, and that again pulls him back. That again, gives a different kind of stress in his mind. So the stress which I was talking about, don't worry about. Don't worry that there can be something like spiritual stress. Spirituality is not at all for stress. These are two opposite polar things. How can there be any stress when you are a really spiritual person? But in so-called pseudo-spirituality, false spirituality, or at least in the initial stages, at least in the beginning of sadhana, at least in the beginning when you are not that much used to it, when you haven't yet totally surrendered to it, you haven't developed that proper wisdom in you, then perhaps for a temporary period of time you will suffer from this kind of strange stress. But I would advise that you don't have to worry about it. This also has its own stress management. The real spirituality, you have to keep that in mind, that these things will go away slowly. Don't fight against them, because if anything is told, if any technique is told, if any method is told about how to deal with this kind of stress, then again you are strengthening it, my dear. That's the problem in it. You will again give it power. You will again strengthen that, and again this stress will be, it will go on multiplying. So either you neglect it, or you take it as a fun. You take it as a, it's a common thing. That just as in a witness kind of meditation, we know that you have to be witness to all the thought currents that come into your mind. So different thoughts come into mind, they come and then they go. It's like a flowing river. From the left the river comes and to the right it goes away. I am standing on the bridge and I am not I am not going anywhere. I am neither going to left or right. I am standing in the middle, standing on the bridge, and I see that water is coming from one direction and it is going away to other direction. So in this way, the thought currents, different kinds of thoughts may come, good or bad, and then they slowly go and vanish away. In the same manner, this kind of stress, it comes and goes away. It's a virtual stress. It's a false stress. It's very funny or very interesting, and yet, shall I call it compulsory part? Yes. Even though our mind is not ready to accept it from there, but still I do think that this kind of so-called spiritual stress, the funny term that I have used now. So I would again request you not to worry about this kind of stress. There is nothing like official spiritual stress as such, but you would certainly know. If you are on the real path, you would have a glimpse of, you will come to know what kind of stress is there. It does come. So okay, welcome that and then say to goodbye. It will automatically go and you will again enjoy the real spiritual practice. So I am sure that now you won't be worried about this kind of spiritual stress. May you be free of this kind of stress and enjoy your real spiritual life with your genuine spiritual practice. And with that, let me say thank you. Goodbye.